It's time for On the Farm in Alabama, bringing farmers and agribusiness the latest news from Alabama Extension and the Auburn University College of Agriculture. Now here's your host, Alabama Extension Regional Agent, Eddie McGriff.
Good day. I'd like to welcome everybody today to On the Farm in Alabama, and today I'm talking with Dr. Katelyn Keisheimer, who is an entomologist with Alabama Extension, and we're going to be focusing today on stink bugs and the damage they do in corn and how vital it is to control them. Katelyn, what would you say are the different stages where stink bugs can be a problem in corn?
Yeah, so we have in three really distinct stages where we can see a lot of damage from stink bugs in corn. And so that first one is going to be your seedling and early vegetative stages, and then we're kind of have a reprieve for a little bit, but then right before tassel, so V13, V14 through tassel, and then the last one is those early reproductives. And so R1, R2, we don't have evidence that we'll get a lot of damage past R4 unless we have extremely high populations. But what we like to say is you want to be vigilant and scouting at least 2 weeks prior to tassel to hit all those stages where you can have damage through R2 to make sure that you're vigilant and treat if necessary.
So when the plant is in the seedling stage, what kind of damage would you describe how stink bugs hit corn?
So we can see things as minor as stunting, all the way up to plant death if they're going to get in really at that growing point and cause a lot of damage. We also see suckers. We have tillering, and those are going to really rob you of your yield. Even the stunting, you can lose about 10% of your yield if you get early damage from stink bug populations. And then obviously if there's really high populations early on, we can have complete plant death.
Another thing that we might see is the buggy whipping of the corn.
Yeah, and so as that primary ear is developing, right before it kind of pushes out of the plant, that's where it's really, really vulnerable to stink bug feeding. They're going to use their piercing, sucking mouth parts to suck out plant juices and sap, all while inserting these enzymes, or basically chemicals in their saliva. They're going to help them digest it. And what that's going to do, as that primary ear is forming, it's really going to stunt it, and you'll end up with the buggy whipping, you'll end up with banana ear, you'll end up with reduced kernel number. And so that's where it's really, really important that if you have stink bugs in your field, you're scouting and treating if necessary.
And when we get to the kernel formation stage and they damage it there, stink bugs can transmit or infect the corn plant with a lot of different things. One of them is aflatoxin.
Yeah, and that's also why we have to keep an eye out all the way through those early reproductive stages. So like we said, they have those piercing, sucking mouth parts, and so they're going to be sucking out plant juices from the kernel, which can reduce kernel weight and kernel size. But like Eddie said, we can also create these entry points for secondary pathogens, which aflatoxin and fumonisin are going to be huge problems when you have the disease and the feeding damage, which can lead to yield loss, contamination, and getting docked at the grain bin.
Well, not only that, is when you put the corn in storage, you have to worry about aflatoxin there, and also you have to worry about the deterioration of the kernels, and you'll get some yield loss, or what we call the difference between when you put the corn in the bin and when you take it out, if you have a lot of damage to the kernels.
Yeah, and you want to go in as clean as possible so you're not putting in any sort of disease or insects that can multiply over the course of storage. And so yeah, absolutely, that's a big thing to keep in mind.
Well, another disease that they can transmit is smut, and we don't see a lot of smut up in North Alabama, but the farther south I get, the more smut you see.
Yeah, yep, and with this hot, humid, and wet weather we've been having, it's a great environment for these fungal pathogens to develop. And so when you have feeding damage, smut introductions, other pathogens, you're going to end up with a lot of diseased corn.
One thing, it's hard to scout for stink bugs in corn.
Yeah, and I've heard growers say they can live in their cornfield and you may not see a single stink bug until ears develop and then you see the damage. They're very sneaky. I like to call them ninjas, because if you're walking through a cornfield scouting, they may drop into that ear collar, and so they're hard to see. And we have a lot of southern green stink bugs, and so that green can blend in with the green plant. And so what I like to do is kind of, go into stealth mode and go along the edge and try to look a row or two over to see if I can find them. Then also look in those ear collars to see if you have stink bugs hiding down there. And look on the ground too, because they're going to drop to the ground as you walk by.
Well, one thing I tell our growers, and I emphasize it, is usually if we have good corn, especially if it's irrigated, we're going to be putting out a fungicide at tasseling. So this is a good opportunity for them to put a pyrethroid in to help control stink bugs.
Yeah, and even in some cases that might be a little bit too late, because you have a lot of the primary ear has developed, and so that's why we like to scout 2 weeks before tasseling. And in terms of pyrethroids, it's less important which one you spray, but it's how you spray it and when you spray it. And so you really want to get good coverage down into the canopy, because those stink bugs are going to fall into those ear collars, they're going to fall to the ground, and so coverage is going to be key, and also timing before they get a chance to do their damage on those developing ears.
Yeah, whatever the recommended rate is on the label, I like to go with the high rate.
Yes. Yep, especially we do have a couple different species of stink bugs, southern green, brown, and now some brown marmorated, and the brown ones are much more difficult to kill, and so the higher rates of pyrethroids will certainly help with that. Our data from the last couple years shows that we have majority of the southern green stink bugs, but there are some browns in there that can absolutely cause damage, and so high rate of pyrethroid will definitely take them out.
Well, we're going to be showing some of the corn damage that you get with stink bugs, and we hope this is an encouragement for you in future years to make sure you scout for and you control stink bugs. Thank you.
Thanks, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.